Good day, my name is Tessa Benson from the Center for African Management and Markets. And today we're joined in the studio by one of our fellows, Dianna Games, who is also the Chief Executive of the South African-Nigeria Business Chamber. Hello, Dianna.
Good day, Tess.
Thanks for joining us, first of all. Today, as a center, we thought we'd have you in to come share your thoughts around, the recent xenophobic crisis. And we thought in terms of business across the continent, and especially between the two largest economies on the continent, South Africa and Nigeria, based on your expertise as the executive of the chamber that manages that, what are your thoughts around how that might affect business going forward?
It's hard to say at this stage because we've had these problems before, the attacks on foreigners, and going back to 2008. And there tends to be a surge of publicity and issues, and then it settles down again. What we haven't seen is any long-standing kind of reaction to this in terms of boycotting South African goods. For example, MTN remains the biggest player by far in the mobile phone space. Shoprite is certainly one of two of the big supermarket chains. So we're not really seeing a pushback from that point of view. Not to say it can't happen. And I think the real issue with this latest round of attacks was that it was another round of attacks. It wasn't the first or the second. Actually, now we're talking about the fourth or possibly the fifth time this has happened. And that's really seen a shift in attitude where people are not so willing to just say, well, we'll settle down again and see what happens next time. And the big change has been really that other countries, which have reacted in the past, but not to the same extent, even though their nationals have been far more affected in terms of the numbers, in terms of the violence, etc., they have now spoken out a lot more loudly, which has not happened in the past. And I think that has been a real wake-up call for South Africa, which finds itself in a very difficult space in terms of trying to rein in this a crime that has spiraled for so long and is not, you can't just change that overnight. But I think it's helpful that people seem to have taken it a lot more seriously, and there seems to be a lot more effort to address the issues underlying this than there have been in the past.
Yeah, because I was going to say, in terms of usually, like you said, we've not really had retaliatory attacks, and especially in Nigeria, where people decided to boycott like the multinationals operating there. Going forward in terms of, and especially with the Nigerian president looking to pay a state visit to South Africa, do you think there's any opportunity for both countries to be able to come up with a strategy to deal with this more long-term and in favor of business for the continent?
Well, business is the main area of engagement between the countries. We've really seen a major drift in the political engagement between South Africa and Nigeria. My contention is that people are no longer really looking at these two countries as the continental leaders. I think that they need to really regain that space and earn it. But that hasn't, for the moment, I would say it's not the case. But in terms of business, business is always ready to play whatever role they can if there is a gap and a need, and the politicians are responsive. It can't be just business. I think we have to deal with the fallout of neglect, for example, the neglect of the South Africans on the area of crime, allowing all these situations to develop without really addressing it. It's always business that becomes the sort of fall guy, if you like, for that, because that is where the main engagement is with Nigeria, is in the area of business. And so I think business does need to have much more of a say or more of an input into how these governments take this forward. I mean, the attempts in the past to address this have really not gained any traction, and they haven't been particularly practical, like there was some kind of sense of an early warning system between the countries. I don't know how that would work when a lot of these things are spontaneous and rely a lot on intelligence, which has clearly not been forthcoming to the level it should. So there's a lot of issues there, but I would definitely say from the feedback from our members that business is very much ready to stand up and be counted, as they always have been. But I think now it seems that the politicians are more willing to listen.
Okay. And do you think business would encounter any challenges in trying to come up with these strategies to create a more conducive environment for both Nigerian businesses and South African businesses?
I think the big issue between these countries is the narrative. You know, there is such a negative, a very strongly negative narrative coming out of Nigeria, not just about these attacks, but I think it's been historical. You know, the newspapers have always, you know, found a reason to write negative articles about South Africa. On this side, the newspapers tend to not write about other African countries much at all. So there are two different issues there. And I think we really have to start changing that before we can go forward. You know, people are very stuck in the past and past issues and challenges. You know, if we can't unlock that, it's going to be very difficult to take this forward. And, you know, I think there are always going to be challenges of some sort in this relationship, and I don't think it has to involve xenophobic attacks, but there have been in the past, long before this came up. So it's just if we're going to take this forward, I think both sides have to, there is no victor and victim in this situation, and I think both sides need to acknowledge that. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to have a free discussion and take it forward.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dianna, for sharing your insights.